Give everybody a chance to get in before we get started. You're all surviving? Okay. Amen. Amen to that. Oh. All right. Well, we'll start getting into it, and then we'll just let those who are straggling in come in as we do. And I'm really been looking forward to doing this piece because it allows me to dive in and get into some weeds, to really get into some core things. And I'll say it's really important to say that that no matter what topic we're talking about, when in terms of recovery, in terms of healing, this applies to just, it's not about just porn. We can talk about alcohol, we can talk about drugs, we can talk about eating disorders, we can talk about workaholism, we can talk about religious abuse. I mean, this whole piece that we're going to dive into actually will give us the tools to look at our own journeys and dig in and see how we can make changes. So, when you looked at, when I talked about the tree at the beginning of last session, and you see the fruits in your life, they represent the behaviors. They represent the things that we don't like necessarily that are in our world. And behaviors, although they're negative and they're destructive and they are painful to your life and to others, just dealing with the behaviors alone will be a life of dealing with behaviors. You will spend your whole life just doing behavioral modification, is really what we're saying. And so there are modalities out there for healing, and it talks about how you can change by doing behavioral mod. And quite frankly, I don't think they work. At least they have not worked on anyone that I've ever helped, nor did they work for me. So I'm going to bring to you what I know works, what worked for me, and I don't like to talk about fluff, which means things that sound great but don't have a whole lot of value in real work. And so we'll try to get to the real pieces, and this would take us five to 6 days to dive into everything, but we're going to kind of take a little bit of the core. And so what that means is we're going to talk about shame, and we're going to talk about relationships. And so when someone says to me that they've recovered from alcohol or drugs, or they're recovering from an eating disorder or whatever, the tendency is to say, I'm recovering from the behavior, right? So most of the modes or modality that's out there tends to work towards the behavior. So in other words, you go into a place that has groups, and they'll have the groups on sex, on sexual addiction, they'll have it on eating disorders, they'll have it on drug addiction, they'll have it on alcohol, they'll have it on relationship addiction, codependency, and they're doing this like all of these fruits, and then they make a group about it. And quite frankly, you're just playing with the behavior. So any group that's focused on the behavior, not to say any group, most groups that focus on behavior are going to still work on behavioral mod rather than on changing what's real. Because if we're going to change what is real, it applies to everything. It's not specialized. They all come from the same issues. They just show up differently in relationships. So although someone might be struggling with alcohol, that same person, that person could be having the same issues as someone who has a sex addiction. And they go, well, I can't join that group because I don't do that and I don't have that problem. And so therefore, we just have all these little pieces out there and thinking that none of them are related. And actually, I don't do groups like that. I do groups that are centered on shame, because every person has shame. Not a person in this room that doesn't have shame to one level or another. So shame is at the heart of this whole thing. So shame, we must know how to address shame. And then secondly, it's relationships. And this is a relational problem. And when we have relational problems, we tend to go to things that we can control. You know you can't control your relationships, right? You can't make your friend or your spouse or your boss do what you want, right? They got to want to do those things, right? So you can't control a relationship. So the reality is that the relationships are not fixable I can't fix you, and you can't fix me. And one of the worst scenarios is in marriage, you think that you can fix your partner. You cannot. And you think your spouse is your lifelong project. You cannot. The idea of relationships are more complicated, and we long for deep relationship, but there's a lot of things that get in the way of that because we're not connecting. And when we're not connecting, we have a tendency to move to something that we can control, which is an object, which is something that's not inanimate, like a drug, like alcohol, like pornography, like eating. We think we can control it, and then we lose control when we start using it. But the idea is we're relating, I'm going to use this word, we're relating to an object rather than to a person. And that's what makes it addictive, because an object will never meet the need that you have relationally. Let me say it another way. An object is not a person. So you can't connect. You can't get something from it because it's not a human being. Human beings, the way we meet our needs is that we meet our needs through a relationship. It doesn't matter whether you're married or whether you have friendships or whether you're a father or a mother or you're a child to someone. The relationships that we have, now this is at the center, and so I want you to pay attention to what this, and we're going to expand on this a lot, is that relationships that are center of life, they are it. Everything depends upon relationship and the quality of that relationship. No career, no success will ever compensate for the lack of connection. When you look at the end of someone's life, they're not going to say, and they never say, I wish I would have worked one more day. I wish I would have done one more roof. I wished I would have built one more empire. No, we're going to say, I wish that I had done more connected with my son. I wished I would have got a better relationship with my parents. I wished I would have had a better relationship with my children. You hear where I'm going. It's always about relationship. So the quality of your relationships determines the quality of your life. That is absolutely central to health. Mental health is, another way of saying is, how are your relationships? So when you say to me, I've recovered from drug addiction, 25 years of drug addiction, and I'm going to say, yay for you're breaking from that, but how are your relationships? Because you can be free of a drug and still be a behind in a relationship, right? The quality of your relationships tell me how you're really doing. It won't be how you got away from a substance. The quality of your relationships, like how have you worked on the broken relationships, the ones that you hurt through the addiction? How have you worked on those relationships that you have with your parents? How is your relationship with your sister or your brother? How is your relationship doing with God? I want to know how your relationships are, because the quality of life is determined by the quality of your relationships. So when I'm looking at recovery, I'm not looking for how long you've been away from a substance. That's great to hear, and that's a kind of a great intro, but I really want to know, how are your relationships? Why that is so important is that when we don't have relationship connection, then we look to something else to meet that need. And there's where we get in trouble. Because nothing other than relationship will ever meet the need that you were created for. You were created for relationship. And so, in my faith, the scriptures that are really central to this is that all the scriptures hang on two: to love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, which is relational. And what's the other one? To love your neighbor as yourself, which is relational. So everything that you read in Scripture hangs on how your relationships are doing. Everything. So in the cute little thing, or in that last verse, was you love your neighbor as yourself. What was that? As yourself means there's a relationship with yourself. So that means, how do I treat me? How do I see me? So if I don't allow myself to heal and get a different perspective about who I am, then my relationships will be hell in a handbasket. So the number one thing in my recovery is changing the way I see myself. Because every other relationship depends on it. I don't want you to raise your hand. Please don't. I don't want anybody coming down to the thing here or coming raising your hand or anything. I don't want to shame or embarrass anyone. But the idea of, think about, how many of those relationships that we have that we just cut off, and we just don't talk to them anymore. We just don't work through them anymore. We're done. We're done with them. And we shut them off, and we close them off, and and so over and over and over again, we have a pattern of, well, we don't get along, goodbye. Instead of learning the tools like conflict resolution, how do you set boundaries, how do you work through connection with each other? What does it mean to have intimacy? What does it mean to actually have a voice in a relationship and be able to say something different than everybody else and be okay with it? So you're being able to build out who you are, which is the first piece, is who are you? Are you your shame? Are you what happened to you? Are you seeing yourself through the lens of what took place in your life? Are you seeing yourself through the damage done? Is that somehow your damage is your lens and how you look in the mirror? Or do you look in the mirror and see yourself through the lens of your mistakes? Do you see yourself as a failure? How do you see yourself determines, because as a man thinks, so is he. So if you believe you're lousy or no good or you're stupid or that you're too ugly or you're too broken to be loved, that's how you'll live your life out. Your belief system about yourself determines how you interact and what I will do. Now I'm going to get into this in more depth, but know that the center of this is recovery is how you become the real you. What does that really mean? That's why you're not just a survivor, because you're not meant just to survive. It's good that you are surviving, hallelujah, but now what does it mean to thrive? What does it mean to flourish? What does it mean to be fully alive and to fully have impact for who God made you to be? So that's such an important piece, is who am I and how do I live from that? So here's where we're going to get into the heart of it. So shame comes into the world, and shame saying, I am the mistake, I am what has happened to me, that I am a failure, I am broken, I am damaged goods, I am dirty, I am soiled, I am good but not good enough. The language that we speak to ourselves, the messages that we have, and the lens that we're looking at through ourselves, is if we see ourselves as broken and unlovable, then I will move the things that won't reject me, that won't harm me, that won't hurt me. So I move the things that won't say no. So objects won't tell me no. Objects won't lie to me. Objects lie to me so I can make me feel good about myself. Said that wrong, sorry. So here's where shame comes into the mix. So going through my experience, I'm gonna go personal first, and then I'm gonna come into the principles that we're gonna talk about. So I was raised in church all my life. I'm a preacher's kid. My parents are pastors. My grandparents are pastors. My great-grandfather was a pastor. My uncle and aunt are pastor, and my cousins are pastors. I can go on, right? I grew up in that environment. But my dad was a roofer, and he was also a pastor. So that means his roofing was the money where he made his money back in the day, and pastoring was something he did with very little money. So his real money was roofing. So he worked 6 days a week on the roof, and then he pastored in the evenings and on weekend. So what that meant was my dad didn't come to my ball games. My dad wasn't in my life. He was there at the house, and he worked hard to make sure we had the clothes and the food, but I never really got to know my dad as a young boy, and my dad wasn't really involved in my life. So how does that play out? And I was really good at baseball, but my father never came to any of my baseball games. And I never learned how to play baseball from my dad. I learned to play catch from my dad, my friend's dad. My friend's dad taught me how to bat. My friend's dad taught me how to play catch. My friend's dad took me to the ball games. My friend's dad took me out after the game was over for a hot dog and a Coke. And I sat there and I looked at this and I'm going, if these boys' dads are taking them out and they're learning to play catch and the dad's involved in them, why is my dad not there? Why is it that my dad's not connecting? Why is it that my dad's too busy? And where shame comes is that the action that he had said that it must be my fault. I must not be lovable. And this isn't my dad's fault. My dad worked his butt off to make sure we survived. My dad is not evil by any means and loves me greatly. But what I perceived about myself from that started the ball rolling for me to think that I can't get love from my real dad. So I got to look somewhere else. So at 6, there was a babysitter that took care of us that lived next door. She was in our church. She was about 6 or 7 years older. And one night, my parents had this big meetings all week, and so we could stay in school, in grade school and all that, or not grade school, but I don't forget care for 6-year-olds, so I wasn't in school. But anyhow, so that we could get up in the morning and go to this kindergarten thing. Anyhow, so the babysitter took care of us for that whole week, and so we spent the night at her house, and the babysitter molested me. And she said she liked me, she thought I was handsome, that I was special, that she cared about me. So when I felt the care, I felt the attention, I felt the affirmation that she really liked me, and that felt like I was a hungry soul for that. Slash, I felt dirty, I felt soiled, I felt like I was damaged goods. And because my body responded to her touch and to her attention, that I felt evil, I felt broken and damaged, because how could a healthy person want that or even respond to that? And why did I not tell anybody? Because from that point on, as long as we lived next to that neighbor, more times than I can count, there's a sea of times where she molested me. And I never told another soul. And part of me is saying, what's wrong with me? Why couldn't I have told somebody? Why didn't I step up and say no? Why didn't I fight for it? There must be something wrong with me. And the way I approached it was as I stuffed that down and I put it into a closet to never discuss it again. And so I move on in my journey as a young boy, and at 9, there was this boy that was brought into our home because his parents were going through a divorce, and so my parents were always bringing people in that were kind of lost or not doing well. And he comes into our home. He's 6 years older than me, and in our home, he sleeps in my bed, in my bedroom, and the first night he stays, he molests me as well. Now, this boy was somebody that I rode we went roller skating together, with skateboarding, we rode bikes together, we played ball together. He was my buddy, but he was old enough that he felt like a dad figure. And anybody that would mess with me, he'd go beat him up, he'd take care of him. So I had a big brother, but he was more like a dad. And so that male figure of somebody who was showing me attention, giving me affirmation, caring about me, and spending time with me, slash, I felt dirty, I felt soiled, I felt damaged, and I can't talk about this. How do you even put language to that? How do you even tell someone? And if I did, what would they say? How would they see me? And so what I was seeing is now, as I look back at it, I'm blaming myself for the activity that's happening to me. So I'm already carrying shame. I'm already allowing shame to decide who knows what's happening and who I'm letting in, which was no one. And if I don't like me, if I hate parts of myself, if I find a part of myself disgusting and unlovable, then there's no way you're going to love me. If I don't like me, how are you going to like me? So hell's going to freeze over before you ever see this, ever. So all those times that he was in our home, over a period of time, that happened more times than I can count, and yet I never told another human being. Now, keep in mind, I'm in church because I'm a pastor's kid, so I'm in church more than I am anywhere else, and all these people so far are from church. So where do you go? Who do you talk to? How do you explain this? How do you open up? And I'm just not going to. And how I did that was I then performed. I was a performer. I memorized scriptures. I could speak early in my life so that people were drawn to me. They liked me. They thought I was cool, but they didn't know what was going on the inside. They were drawn to my efforts and my actions and my skills and my talents. I was an athlete, got lots of kudos for the accomplishments I did with being a young athlete. But no one, absolutely no one, knew what was going on in here. So I happened to be at a church camp at 12, and this guy was 19, and he had won the awards for the singing. He was Mr. Talented. He also won the sports award in basketball, so he was gifted. So I was carrying his ball for him. I was walking around with him. I was buddied up with him, and I really saw him as someone who was really kind and considerate and kind of like a dad figure. Again, I was always drawn to that older boy because I really was hungry for that older male affection. But it didn't end there. Last night at camp, he molested me as well. Now, what I got this neon sign on my head that says, "Here I am, molest me," because I wasn't asking for that. I was just wanting his attention. And what it did is it affirmed again that there's parts of me that I will never, ever let anyone know. Because if they knew that about me, what are they going to say? And I'll lose respect, I'll lose love, I'll lose connection. I won't feel like I belong. No one will care. They'll see that dirty, broken boy, and there's no way they're going to love me. And so, because in the name of wanting love and attention and affirmation, I'm going to hide these parts of me that I don't believe is acceptable. And here's the thing, is that when I do that to myself, I'm punishing me. I'm self-sabotaging me because there's a parts of me I don't like. There's parts of me that I absolutely detest and find disgusting and am angry with. And so my relationship with myself is that if someone does something bad, I'm punishing me for it. Not punishing the person who did it, I'm punishing me. So the idea of, by the age of 12, I was totally locked up internally. Now, you would have never known it on the outside. Never. All you would have seen is a boy full of energy and moving and being successful in so many different aspects. But I was like the life of the party, Mr. Personality, but on the inside, I was dying. So at 12, I'm over at my uncle's house, which those who saw the movie that's where it starts, is over at my uncle's house playing Army, and in his shed, who was an elder in the church, who was a counselor, he had over 200 to 300 pornography magazines in his shed. And when I opened up that first magazine, that was just like a drug. I mean, I remember those images just the same as it would have happened today. They imprinted in my young mind, and I could not get them out of my head. And it could put me on a trajectory of relationship with those pictures and those images, because my feeling was that I could never get a real relationship, someone who would really want me. So I've got to do this to get the love that I want, because I didn't believe I could be real and be loved, to be real, to let you see me. So I'm going to need to do something different than everybody else. See, I can believe that you can be that way. I can believe that you could be real, but for me, I can't do that because I think it will be the end of me in doing so. Someone will judge me, they'll reject me, they'll abandon me, they will push me out of their life, and they'll lose respect for me, and I'm not willing to sacrifice those things. I want to be loved. So the whole story then goes, once I was exposed to pornography, man, I use the word addicted because I couldn't get rid of it. I was going to picture after picture, magazine after magazine. Now, I couldn't buy it, and there was no internet during my day, so the only way you could get porn was behind a counter with an adult-only section, or the spillover effect, which was that people trashed it, or that parents had it sitting out somewhere. And that's how I saw it, was the trash, and then parents having it in their other friends' parents having it in their home. And I would steal pornography from the stores. I would watch the magazine. I'd take a magazine from one of the parents' house or the friends' houses and bring it home. I'd tear out photos and then bring it back and sit it down. I don't know how they wouldn't know that somebody was messing with their magazines, right? But that was my world. I was completely doing this in secret, and yet on the outside, I was this performer. I learned early to be real meant rejection, because then I would hear comments like, "Oh, that guy, that pervert who has pornography." And I'm going, "Oh, I have pornography. I'm a pervert." And if I reveal this, look how they're treating that guy. Man, if I reveal this, this is what they're going to do to me. No way. So I kept it in secret. And as long as it stays in secret, I'm going to say this. I know I said it in the front the first time, is you can't heal what you hide. So I kept thinking I could change this in secret. I can just fix this myself without ever having to risk exposure, without ever having to risk telling somebody. I'm just going to change this myself. And nothing that I did had long-term effect. It was always short-term. I had success in certain, like a couple weeks sometimes, 6 months sometimes, but rarely was it any more than that. So I felt like, man, I'm just this weird freak pervert because I can't let go of this stuff that is wrong. And lines that I said I would never cross, I was crossing. I was watching materials that there was no video during that time. They were just 8mm, so that I didn't have my hands on anything that was video. So it was all just imagery. But this imagery and the storylines that went with it, they talk about father-daughter, father-son, mother-daughter, mother-son, bestiality, a whole lot of different things were talked about in those magazines. Then so that it's not just the picture themselves, they had storylines that went with it. And the storylines, you get aroused by what you're seeing, and while you're aroused, here's these things that are getting planted in your world and thinking. So I grew up on all of that. At 16, and then this is where I'll stop for now. At 16, I was walking home from a wrestling match that I was a wrestler in high school, and it was down the last mile, and I was walking towards the house and this car went by and it threw out this book, and in a ditch about I don't know, a couple hundred yards in front of me. And so I was curious what they threw out the window. And when I got to where they were, there was this book, and the book was called something like the name, Playing with Little Sis or whatever. And so they had story after story after story saying that brother-sister sexual experience was a way to discover before you get married and before you get into real relationships. And so they glamorized and normalized brother-sister relationship. Now, my sister was my best friend. She was 14, I was 16. I would date her friends, she would date my friends. I had my car, just getting my car, and my car was broken at this time, so that's why I was hitchhiking and walking home. But for the most part, she would go in car with me and with her friend, and we'd double date. So we did a lot. We rode our horses together. We did everything together. So she was my best friend, one of my best friends. And when I read those stories, I knew this was breaking something inside of me. I knew it was wrong. But the drive inside was stronger than my knowing it was wrong. And so one night, I acted on one of the stories with my 14-year-old sister. I don't think there is anything more painful. To see this obsession that I had now touch another person, someone I care about, someone I love. And so when that happened, I swore off pornography. I swore I would never touch it again. And my demonstration that I meant business is I went to Bible college to get my pastoral license. I meant with all my heart that I'm never doing this again. So from 16 to 21, I never touched it. So I went quite a bit of time without any of the symptoms so I thought I'd beaten it. Thought they didn't have any more trouble with it. It's fine. And And then when my ex-wife now, we got pregnant, and she was our first baby, and the baby inside was moving and shifting, and it triggered her sexual memories of her childhood sexual abuse and she didn't even know she had sexual abuse, and that all that memory came up. And so she would wake up in the middle of the night screaming and crying and sweating and freaking out. And so I tried to hug her, and she pushed me away. I didn't know what the memories were about. I just knew she was freaking out. So I tried to hug her, and then I'd come up to her when she was washing dishes, and I tried to give her a hug, and she'd push me away. I tried to give her a kiss, and she'd wipe it off. And all of this was those memories were stirring for her. And guess where I went with it? Oh my gosh, she's seeing that dirty little boy, and she's pushing away. And so I'm thinking, well, if she's not going to love me, then I'm going to do this differently. And I went back. This time now I'm of age, and I walked into a sexual-oriented business for the first time. And it took me into a whole world of the pornography, the prostitution, massage parlors, escorts, strip clubs. I was fully engaged in all of that. And no one had a clue. No one. All under the same thinking that if I reveal that I have a struggle, I'm pastoring now at this time, and if I reveal my struggle, they will not only kick me out, I'll lose respect, I'll lose relationship, and I'm not willing to do that. And so therefore, I just kept it silent. And I keep thinking that I'm going to change this by doing it myself. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to stop this. I'm not going to do this again. But I would find myself doing that. I can't tell you how many times I broke that promise. So part of my hate towards myself is that I can't even keep the promises that I make. I don't even trust myself. So I'm going to come back to the shame statements for a moment. At 6, when I was sexually abused, I allowed my trauma, which I didn't know any different, my trauma defined who I was. I saw myself through my trauma. I saw my value based on what happened to me. Now, none of it's true in the sense that I was 6 years old. Can you imagine, just for a minute with me, if I was 6 years old and I came through the door and I stood up here and I said, I was sexually abused today, would you push me out the door? No. But somehow shame twists truth. And somehow what I needed was for someone to embrace me, to hug me, to say, Gene, it wasn't your fault. Gene, that offender needs to pay the consequences. I'm so sorry this happened to you. Let me give you a hug. Let me sit with you. Can we get you some help? Get you some counseling? That is the kind of thing that I needed. Which would have required me to come into the light. So as long as things stay hidden, they stay in the enemy's territory, which comes to rob, steal, and destroy, because he's the prince of darkness. So he works in secrecy. He works in darkness. And so as long as I'm in darkness, I'm underneath his thinking. Freedom, the only true way for freedom is to come into the light. Because the God is light, and in him there is no darkness. There is no shadows. And if we're going to walk with God, we're to walk with him in the light as he is in the light. And if we confess our sins, he's faithful and just to forgive us from all our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. So there's an answer to our flaw. There's an answer to our shame. But the answer isn't what we normally think. Because when we feel shame, what's our natural reaction? We go into hiding. Hiding is the number one result or symptom of shame. So I always have people tell me, well, I don't have shame. And I said, so do you have things in your life you're hiding that you don't want nobody to know? Well, yeah. I said, well, you got shame. So the idea is that it's a condition that we all carry at different levels, but we all have it. And the only way to break shame is to come out into the open. It's relational because shame attacks my identity. Shame assassinates who I am. And when I was that 6-year-old little boy, it assassinated me as a little boy in that beauty. I can remember the day, it was my 6th birthday, and I wished I had the picture with me, but I didn't bring him. And I was all dressed up in cowboy boots and cowboy shirt, and I had 6 little plastic guns, and I had a hat, and I had a little horse. And that was my birthday gift at 6. And we celebrated it, and I remember it because it was everything I wanted, right? And then it was just 2 weeks later that little boy went into a hole. It was 2 weeks later that I was sexually abused. That little boy lost everything. And what I longed for was love, but I can't get love when there's walls. Why? Because I need to be seen, to be loved. I need to be known, fully known, and to get love. I can't get love from behind walls. Intimacy is having no walls. That you have enough information that you could hurt me, but I have enough information that I could hurt you too. So do we really want to go that game? No. We want to learn how to love each other with all of that stuff down. So the number one thing, and here's where I'm getting to that actually gets to why trafficking, why porn, is this whole idea of shame. Because when we carry shame, and when we long for, every person was created for intimacy. Every person was created for intimacy. For you to see who I am, to be known and to be loved, to be known and to be accepted, fully known, no hiding, no pretending, no secrets, that I can be who I am and for you to embrace me. Shame says you can't do that. That's suicide. And what I do then is I look to something else rather than relationship that could hurt me, that could reject me, that could harm me, to judge me. Well, porn was that perfect thing. At least it seemed like it. Because the woman in the pictures are posed to say, welcome to my world, I want you. They gave you the eyes, they gave you the body posture, they gave you the thing that says everything about that is welcoming. And that whole idea of wanting to be welcomed, to be embraced, to be seen, to be loved, and I couldn't do it in the real world, so now I'm replacing it with an image in my fantasy that's somehow coming to me, that somehow I'm getting an embrace from that piece of paper. It's empty. It's an empty embrace because that woman's not going to come off those pages and embrace me. That woman's not going to come off those pages and be in my life and hear my trauma and walk alongside of me. She's not going to be that. It's an empty embrace. But in my embracing it, I'm saying I don't deserve real love. Look at the damage. So I'm going to have to settle for this. I want you to have real love. I believe it's okay for you, but I'm not a candidate for it. And when I believe that I'm not a candidate for real love and for a real relationship, then I'm going to look for the pseudo. I'm going to look for the way that I can get love without having any fear of rejection. And although that woman will never put her arms around me, in my mind, she's doing so. In my fantasy, she's doing so. And so it speaks to a thirst, a longing. Welcome to my world. I want you. So the thirst was driving me to want that. But when I have a thirst for an object, and that's what the porn picture is an object. She's not a real person in my mind. She's an object. I then can stay safe and still get what I want. But the truth is, objects can't love. And so every time I go to it, I try to get the same feeling that I had when I saw it. And guess what? It doesn't work anymore, and I need to escalate it. I need to up the ante. And it means either I cross lines, things I said I would never do, more graphic, more disgusting, more descriptive. So I'm growing in the escalation, trying to meet that need, and it never gets met. It's always going to wind up empty. Because what I need is a human being. I need connection at a human level. I'm a human being, not a human doing. Nothing I can do actually fills that need. It's about connection. So when I'm connecting with an object, it's always going to be empty. And with empty also comes frustration and anger. And when you have frustration and anger, and you have fantasy and you have passion all mixed together. And by the way, when I was 6 years old, there was shame and sex that were introduced as the same experience. So shame and sex had to be together to even enjoy the sexual experience. So shame was always in that mix. So is this making sense so far? So if I'm going to change the way I'm going to look at porn, I've got to change the thinking first, the thinking that I can use a person and get my needs met, and that doing this is okay to dehumanize. The way I'm thinking is that I can dehumanize, get in relationship with a body part, a certain size, certain shape, certain look, and many times the porn doesn't even have the eyes anymore. It's just the body part and the focus on that body part. So I get in relationship with body parts. And the way that the pornography plays out, here's the sack of seeds. So if I'm in relationship with body parts, and then I try to apply that to relationship, think about it. How does it feel to be treated like a piece of meat? Or how does it feel to be treated like, a vagina or a breast or a buttocks or a face or a body shape? How does it feel when someone tries to apply the thinking of pornography into a relationship? Well, it don't work. It causes harm. It's destructive. So everything about porn is a lie. And yet I'm buying into all of those lies as a young boy because I don't know nothing about sex. And here I am trying to learn. And at the same time, I'm trying to meet needs that I'm not doing relationally. And no one really knows what's going on with me. No one really knows the trauma I'm carrying. And the frustration and the pain just fuels it even more. And the isolation fuels the addiction even further. So the number one step to coming out is, first of all, come into the light. You can't change this by staying in secret. You must come into the light. That means come into the light, though. Come into the light with who? Find a safe space to do that. And most of the time that means find a good counselor, find a good safe group that works on things, find a good community of people that you can talk to, but find at least one person where there's no self-protection, where you can lay it out. Because the stuff that you hold back is the things that keep you from recovering. You can't recover what you don't open up. You must open up and be open and honest about it. Because if I don't open up, there's always going to be the lie that says, if you knew this piece, you wouldn't like me anymore. And if I believe that always drives me to something else rather than the real relationships. So shame is at the core. And what breaks shame is coming into the light. Coming into the light breaks shame, because you get the exact opposite of what your fear is. Your fear is of rejection, but you find healthy, safe people, and the absolute opposite happens. You get acceptance. You get embraced. You have people who want to walk alongside of you. So you want relationships where there's no fear. The second piece is that when you actually start looking at the things that you're bringing into the light, there's a lot of debris, right? There's a lot of things that we're not talking about because we're afraid of what that will mean. So that means I need to have a community around me, especially a counselor or an elder, somebody who has a workable knowledge of how to get through this. Have somebody help me journey in getting those pieces fixed. So number one thing for me was the sexual abuse. I needed to address the sexual abuse in my life and heal from that. I had no clue that sexual abuse played a role in my desire to use porn. I had no clue that my relationship with my dad, the distance in that, set me up for an appetite to look for places that I normally wouldn't. I had no clue that that was broken. I didn't really have language for it. I had no clue that I needed to heal the father wound in that relationship. And so as I began to heal the pieces as they come into the light, as I began to work on them, they begin to heal one piece at a time. You get the feeling there's no magic wands here? Someone scares the heck out of me when they say, yeah, I was a porn addict and I just got a prayer for me and now I'm fine. And I'm going, oh no, you're a walking disaster. There's more to this than just stopping the porn. There's a reason why you're going to it. And if we don't address the why and exchange it for truth, because if you're going to porn, you're living a lie, and the only way you can change a lie is with discovering truth. You shall know the truth, and the truth sets you free. You got to have truth in your world. So what is true about you? And learning then, what are those elements of my history, my journey, my story that plays a role in my consuming, in my using? Because if I don't address that, then I'm going to still do it. It's just a matter of time. And what I don't want to see is people hit the wall like I hit the wall, which was attempted rape. There is no excuse for that. I had to spend time in jail for that. I needed to do that. That was necessary for me. But it isn't enough because I didn't stay in there long enough for I could have been there forever, but I didn't. I was out. And what do you do with me then? I still had the same dynamics. Nothing's changed. The only thing that happens in jail is you meet people who have similar offenses and you learn how to do it better. And you get reinforced by all those prisoners saying, yeah, dude, that's awesome. It's like, no, I don't need to hear awesome. I need challenges. I need to move in a way that is healthy. And the way I'm going to get that is in a safe environment. So the healing piece is really, really big. And then so that it's the wounded heart. So God comes to heal the wounded heart and to set the captive free. Captivity, we use the language bondage. I get a little nervous with that because of the way it's been used. Somebody can slap oil on you and you're free. Somebody thought that if I spit in a Dixie cup that I would be spitting out demons and it's all gone now. And it's like, there's so much wacky witch doctory stuff out there. The reality is that when we are in bondage, it's because we believe a lie about ourselves that holds us bondage. In other words, it's the lie that holds us in bondage. The lie that we believe that we're no good. The lie that we believe that we are our trauma. The lie that we believe that we are our struggles. The lie that says that you have no value, that you're not worth loving. Those are lies. And as long as we believe those lies, we will always act in a way that based on those lies. The lies have to change. That takes work. That isn't something you just do that. And then I'll do the last because Lord help me. We're already past time. So let me just say this, that relational health is the key to success for long-term healing. So I needed to face the wounds with my kids, every one of my kids. I had to face the wounds with my father and my mother. I sat down and worked with my family, and those relationships are restored. I still have 2 relationships that, even though I've done all the hard work, have still not really wanted to get in my world. So I have a son and a daughter that are still not in my world. They don't want to be at this point, but it doesn't stop me from recovering and growing, so that when they're ready, and I'm going to say when they're ready, I'm going to be a better me than today, because I'm continuing to grow and to learn and become healthier. So I want that healing to happen, and it's up to them when they're ready for it. But I have taken steps into all of the broken relationships. I made a list, and one by one, I took them on one by one. Work through forgiveness, working through reconciliation. How do I face that? Being willing to admit where I've harmed and face it and heal and change. Now, I want to do this. I was holding on to this because this is the last and most important part. We could, like I said, I need 2 weeks to unpack everything that I just gave you in a fire hose. But it is, you learn to thrive rather than just survive. And what does that mean? Well, it comes out of identity, to know who you really are. And so typical Christian answer to that is, well, I'm a son of God, I'm a daughter of God, I'm a child of the King, and I'm going to say hallelujah for that. But that just tells me what family you're in. That didn't tell me who you are. Have you ever been in a family where there's like 5 different siblings? Do you know any of the siblings are the same? Every sibling is different. Every one of them has different DNA, different fingerprints, different personality, different core values. What it means is who you are is based on your core values. And you have to begin to discover who you are and then learn how to live from that rather than letting life tell you how to live you. You are a unique individual. God created you for a purpose. You have a fingerprint that's different than anybody else because God made you unique. And he didn't just make you to breathe air and take up space. He made you for impact. He made you for a reason. And it's not for destruction. It's not for the enemy to have glory in your pain. It is actually for a purpose that he created you for. And when you discover that, when you get your mind around that and heart around that, and you begin to live that, you're the most alive you'll ever be. And when you are alive and you're clear about who you are, your whole journey changes. Why would I settle for that when I can have this? It makes all the difference in the world in knowing who you are. And it actually makes the ability for you to make greater choices, better choices. So my wife, Grace, over here, she is a sweetheart. And I literally, I can't even imagine what life would be without her. The choice of her in my life, she loves me like I've never had anyone love me this well, ever. To actually know me and to love me well and to support me and walk in it, but then she has her own journey and I'm with her as well. So I understand now what it means to be fully alive and fully living out what God has purposed in me, and nothing is stopping me from that. And there's no way I'm going back. And I'm not saying that in any kind of bragging way. This isn't about like, look at me thing. No, I've been through the depths of the crap, and I ain't going back. I'm tasting what I was meant for. Are you kidding me? You think I want to go back to that? No. And the more you learn who you are and begin to live that, that's when you're the most alive. And when you're the most alive, it gives you the energy to fight. So one last thing in that is that to combat the harm and the bad in your life, here's the deal, is that the focus is not in the bad. The focus is in what you're meant for. And why is that? If I said to you, don't think about a pink elephant in this room, what did you just do? Now, how are you going to get that pink elephant out of your head? Because we keep talking about that pink elephant. Don't think about that pink elephant. Get that pink elephant out of your head. Now, what did we just do? We just made that pink elephant part of this room, right? And the more you try to think about it, the more it's there. But the key in this is it's not what you're trying to stop, it's what you're trying to become. So growing what you know God made you for is what will give you the energy to say no to the things that are not good. Put your focus on growing. Put your focus on development. Put your focus on discovering your identity and growing that. And because that will give you the energy you need to actually take on the bad. Because it's not an issue of knowing, it's an issue of having the strength to say no. And so when I'm filling myself with everything that is good for me, and I'm moving in the direction that moves my identity to a purpose, and I'm being fulfilled, I will have the ability to say no to those things that normally just took me down the wrong road. I don't even, do I get challenged? Of course I do. But I have in place those things that I have connections, I have authentic relationships with my friends, especially my wife, and I have good community, not only in church community, but a real community. I can't stand fake community. I want a real community. And then the other part of this is that I'm living out my purpose. Nothing has to get me up in the morning. I know what I'm up for. And I'll do this, I'll live it, and I'll walk it for the rest of my life. And I'll grow it, and I'll develop it. And the more I become that, the less chance I'll ever take to go backwards. What you need to focus in on then is be so full of what God has for you that you won't even think about going to the bad. So when you're filling yourself with what is good, then you develop strength. And to deal with the hard things, you need strength. So what do? You feed yourself first so that you can do the task. You don't do the task and then think, oh, maybe I should eat something. No, I get up in the morning and I eat well so I can take on the task of the day. Same thing here. Learning how to fill your tank, love yourself well, build your relationships, and heal those places where the shame has got a hold of you. Face those things and grow yourself so that you can take on the harder tasks. I wish we could talk more. I feel like I'm cutting ourselves short, but any questions or anything that I know that we gotta go to lunch. I know that I'm saying fill yourself and get some strength, right? So here I am saying, no, I'm going to cut you off from lunch. Do you want anybody to ask a question, or where are we at, Bob? Yes, sir. Yeah. Right, right. The thing is that what I find is that everybody's got walls up, right? So you really don't get connection like you really need until the walls start coming down. And so the idea of allowing people into those deeper spaces is when you start really getting love, because it's there that we actually get love, is when we actually are known, when we're fully known. If we just have people around us that know us based on how we're performing, our human doing stuff, like I care for you, I do this for you, I provide this, I'm kind to you here. It's all about doing, and it isn't about connection. Connection is opening up the heart and them seeing you, and then when they embrace you there, now you're getting love, right? Now, because now they know what they're loving. Before, they're just loving blindly, even though they think they know because of the outside. What's on the inside is really what tells what the person is doing. So what I'm saying here with my wife, Grace, she knows me, and she moves into my world in ways that I've never had ever. And so I'm tasting real love because she sees me, even flaws and all, and she still loves me, which is beyond my comprehension. But it breaks that shame thing that says, well, if you're real, she won't be here anymore, right? Or she'll throw you out the door. And so authenticity is the key to that, is learning how to live authentically. And you don't do that with everybody, because we already know that's suicide. So you need to have good, healthy friendships, 1% at a time, where you build those relationships where there's openness, there's connection, and you're working on it, right?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gene.